Hey there! I am so excited to join you tonight now from home. I am home from Boston and still just pretty giddy with excitement after being at the Functional Neurologic Disorders Society meeting for the last 3 days. I'm a little jet lagged, but still have so many things to share. I feel like it's probably going to take me a few weeks to share some of the latest research that has come out, the clinical pieces, so much of what I learned from the folks that were there, the researchers, the clinicians, but also the people with FND that shared stories. I really just don't know that I've ever been at a better conference. So I'm excited to share some things with you today. And I grabbed a couple of the slides, and you may have seen me share about this study before, because when I read it, I was pretty blown away. And this researcher, Aaron Fobian, she actually presented this study and went into more detail about it. So if you've heard me talk about this before, this is the retraining and control therapy for pediatric psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, which are functional seizures. Although what I will say is that she was like, look, this is for everybody with functional neurologic disorder. So not just this group. So she shared about this research study. I've talked about it before. Really great outcomes for all the kids in the study. So I have a couple of the slides that I wanted to share here. So here were, she shared some of the 1-year outcomes. So I think this is what's so helpful. Sometimes we get these studies and we see an immediate outcome. Okay, great, they did well. But I think more often the question I get from people is, yeah, but how long does this last? And this is the 1-year outcome. So, right after the therapy, really high response of kids being seizure free. This is also a very excellent outcome. 57% of the kids with functional seizures remained seizure free at 1 year. And the average functional seizure frequency was less than 1 per month. This is huge. So if you are working with somebody with seizures, or if you're a person with functional seizures, they often happen more than once per month. And so getting the average down to less than 1 per month, or maybe even being seizure free for a year, is huge. That's how powerful this particular treatment was. Another thing that I think was so big that she shared was that all the kids were continuing to engage in their activities. So school, whatever other activities they were in. And I know when we see kids or adults, that's one of the biggest pieces is let's get you back to that activity. Was it work? Was it school? Was it art? What were you engaged in that you're not doing now? And then of course this is really helpful, but the kids and the parents said it was helpful and acceptable. That's important, because if it's not, nobody's going to do it, right? So again, these were the outcomes from the REACT study. One of the things that I really loved was her description of what went into it. And it was actually pretty simple. So one, it included a lot of education. And I think this is a really important part, not just of psychotherapy, but OT, PT, speech, any of those pieces, having a clear explanation of functional neurologic disorder, like what is it? What does it mean? What is the treatment approach? Having an individualized plan for the child, and having a family plan. So I know, because we work with a lot of kids, that it's really important to have a plan with the family. How do you respond to symptoms? Because that actually really can influence the symptoms themselves. She brought specific examples of, not to go to the ER, how to work with the kiddo and help calm their nervous system. And she was explaining these things, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what we do. So it was very validating for what we do in physical and occupational therapy too. And then having a clear plan to return to previous activities. Their team, actually within the study, was having kids go back to school right away. They had a plan with the school how to respond to a functional seizure. It was really well laid out. Okay, well, you might, leave the classroom, so you're in a quiet space, but then you return to school. Now, that might sound like a lot if you're having functional seizures, and it might sound really scary. But one of the things that she really emphasized was how important it is for our nervous system regulation to have that component of a normal routine. And I know our OTs talk about this a lot, is just to keep going back. Now, one thing that is important is let's also consider what are the potential stimuli in the environment, right? Visual stimuli and sensory and sound and all of those pieces. So she wasn't saying ignore those pieces, but to really normalize a functional seizure and get back to normal activities and having a plan for that. So I really loved the simplified way they put together this React. And whoopsie, oh my goodness, totally went upside down there. So sorry if you have visual symptoms there. I don't know if I can tighten this. Okay, so this was the other thing, super simple. And again, this was a psychotherapeutic approach, but I think it applies to physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all of the things. Here's their real three-pronged approach in each of the sessions. Providing a sense of control. This is huge because we understand functional neurologic disorder as a disorder of loss of self-agency, actually particular to the right temporal parietal junction, where the person is not experiencing their a control over their movements or in this case seizure. So sense of control, attention to symptoms, meaning changing the attention to symptoms, and symptom expectation. Now, this is a really big one that I don't even have time to go into today, because there was some really excellent talks about what happens in the brain and how it predicts behaviors and movements to occur before we even are thinking about it consciously. So I'm going to go about that. I got to talk about that one because it blew my mind. Some of the greatest researchers in the world were sharing about this brain predictive function. And so that's like a whole nother time. I will chat about it. But it does have particular influence on this idea of once our brain learns and starts to predict and expect a symptom to occur. So let's say you have a functional seizure every time you're under a fluorescent light. The brain will start to learn and encode and predict that, even if that's not really necessarily what needs to happen. So we're kind of our brain makes these patterns up, and when we expect it to occur, our brain will actually produce it. That's not purposeful. It's not making it up. It's not faking it. It's actually a brain process that's occurring. And so a big part of undoing that process in functional seizures, but also any functional symptom, is changing that brain's prediction. can we gradually expose to a fluorescent light so that the brain stops predicting and producing a functional seizure? Yes, we can. And that's exactly what they did. So building and I'm not saying they did all of this with fluorescent lights. It's individualized. It's for the person and their symptoms, but by restoring a sense of control, by changing the attention of the symptoms to the symptoms and changing that loop and feedback for the brain. This is what provided those really excellent results. So again, this is the Re+active study. These are the slides and the work of Aaron Fobian, and just a really great researcher in this field and some of the best evidence that we have for improvement in functional seizures. So I'll just pull this up again if you've just joined. I was highlighting her work and her slides from this retraining and control therapy. I know it's React. It's not from Reactive. I wish it was. Retraining and control therapy for pediatric functional seizures. So really awesome to hear her speak and to get this and really like listen to how this worked. She actually had videos to show and see the responses with people. And this is really one of the most influential studies to me and to our practice, to where we've kind of incorporated a lot of these ideas into our own therapy. Now, I want to bring up one other piece. This came up on the last day, and another really great researcher. I went to a lot of things in the psychotherapy world because I found it really fascinating. This was from Kim Bullock. She's a psychiatrist, neuropsychiatry, behavioral neurology, and in lifestyle medicine. So quite impressive. She's at Stanford, and she led a great little discussion group about some of the things that we might do as therapists that will interfere with a person's progress, particularly in functional neurologic disorders. So I thought this was great. Now, she was leading it in terms of psychotherapy, but I think this is really for anybody. So doubting the diagnosis and encouraging further unnecessary workups, not helpful, particularly in moving forward and in therapy. Now, from a psychotherapy standpoint, she's like not augmenting with physiotherapy when indicated. And I would say if you're a PT or OT, not augmenting with psychotherapy, I think that goes both ways. Unnecessary fears around symptoms. So this is something that we talk about in our complex case masterclass and in Brain Bites. If we as the therapist are having a lot of fears around the symptoms, seizures, tremors, myoclonus, weakness, or if we're having a worry about liability, this is going to influence our therapeutic relationship. This woman was like speaking my love language when she was talking about this, because these are things that we think about and talk about a lot. If we engage isn't this slide amazing? Sherry is commenting this slide is everything here. Engaging in reinforcing behaviors. This is another one that I love. Fragilizing clients, not pushing for more change or skills practice or doing too much for them and not allowing them to do the skills. This often comes from that number 3 with excessive fears from ourselves as a therapist. Just really, really great. Arguing with someone. I don't know about you, if you've ever been felt like you needed to argue with a client, but instead of, maybe they don't agree with what you're saying about FND. So let's go together. So she uses this idea of guided discovery, especially around connections between symptoms and emotions or other triggers, right? And then finally, invalidating. Now, if I've heard it once, I've heard it a million times. I think this is the number one thing I hear from people with FND is that they've been invalidated by a healthcare provider. And it's devastating. It's truly devastating. And it's traumatic for people, and it's really hard to build trust with other healthcare providers after that has occurred. So invalidating them rather than, I love the way she puts this, finding the truth in their lived experience. Making sense and meaning and understanding. And this, I think, is something that we can do as healthcare providers, is like we come up with a story or formulation in our head, and it's our formulation rather than the person's formulation. And this is a big reason why I advocate for really listening to the person, really understanding what they think is going on. This is why we use our pie chart to have people fill it out. It's a blank pie chart. Fill out, what do you think is going on? Because I think it helps us put the person first and not our own preconceived notions. So this is a slide directly from Kim Bullock's slides that she shared with us with these therapy interfering behaviors. And I think these are big red flags if you're a person with FND and experiencing them. And these are all things that we can be, as therapists, really aware of to avoid, to be honest. So there you have it. A lot on psychotherapy today, but that was a lot on the last couple of days of the FND Society conference, presenting that research, that amazing research. I know I've talked about it before on here. I will keep talking about it, from that great research from Aaron Fobian, and some of those great take-home points from Dr. Kim Bullock at Stanford. So I'll be coming back with a lot more. I'm in Brain Bites. By the way, if you're a Brain Bites member, this Thursday, tomorrow actually, Lincoln and I are going to share some of what we learned, particularly in some of the overlap of FND and Parkinson's, but just more of our great little nuggets from this great conference. So if you want to hear more about functional neurologic disorders, please reach out to me, send me a direct message, and I want to hear from you. If you are not already on our newsletter, then join it. So you can join if you're a healthcare provider, join at reactiveeducation.com. But if you're a person with a neurologic disorder, join at reactivept.com. We'll send out these videos. We'll send out links to resources. So I'll send out that REACT study, for example. I'll send out a link to Dr. Bullock's work from Stanford, and all the other resources that we kind of put together over the course of the week. We'll send them out in a newsletter every week, and this is just what we do. We learn stuff and we share it with you. It is really just my professional commitment to other healthcare professionals and to people with neurologic disorders. So I thank you for joining me tonight. I so appreciate it, and we'll be talking soon. Have a great night. Oh my gosh, so sorry. Upside down again.